Well, hopefully it would do something positive, but most likely it'll do what those kind of programs always do. Spend a lot of money. They're inefficient. They're always cost more than they thought they should. And besides, it's built on some mystical belief that you shouldn't have any concern about deficits. You shouldn't have any concern about what they're going to do with those deficits at the Federal Reserve. It's just more, everybody's in a dream. And this is part of it. So I would think that this is, worse than average. Most of the time people say, well, this is a little bit too much and we ought to be cautious, and they have some people warning. But this is probably the most outrageous thing ever, considering what has been spent in the last year. And that was on top of us trying to come out of a recession that lasted for many, many years. And also, I think before coronavirus, our recession, our correction was already in motion. So I think this dream, they're convinced that deficits don't matter. They claim that what we have been doing, if you exaggerate it, you call it modern. It's a modern monetary theory. Well, the theory's been around a long time, but this is an insane monetary theory, and it causes a lot of harm. And I just think it's building now. And one of these days it's going to break loose, and people are going to lose confidence in the purchasing power of the dollar. They just can't keep doing this. Other than if they can, they have defied all kind of common sense and history that all you have to do is have a monopoly monetary system, just print out the money. So for a while it lasts, and since there's a theory about the subjective theory of value, you can kid and fool people for a while, but eventually this is going to lead to a great disaster, this type of spending, and I think the roads will continue to erode. Oh yeah, I think it's just a feeble attempt to try to rescue a system that is bankrupt. I mean, this whole system is bankrupt. It is not workable, so they do this. But this whole idea of independence, I just don't believe that they're interested in independence. They're interested in secrecy, because I don't think of the Treasury and the Federal Reserve and the fiscal people and the Congress as really representing a whole lot, because I think about the people that we place in the shadow government, in the deep state, because there's people pulling strings that have a lot of power and clout. They never asked me. I was on the banking committee for all those years. I couldn't even go to the open market committee meeting. So there was no way that would be permissible. So it is controlled by outsiders. But, and I think this sort of shows, with two Federal Reserve people in charge at Treasury and at the Federal Reserve, and it's all a rescue operation, and they think they can do it, and they have pulled the rabbits out of the bag many times, and you think this thing isn't going to last, but they end up doing it, and they continue to do it. So they agree on this. But I don't think that it's just a matter of independence. Giving the Federal Reserve more independence has nothing to do with helping the problem, because they're way, way too independent and secretive and out of the control of the Congress. The only thing they could have, the only things that we should be doing, if we seriously want to understand it, is have a thorough audit and find out what goes on behind the scenes, and then get rid of the Federal Reserve. We didn't have a central bank for a long time, and they're all over the world. But like you pointed out, Michelle, they're failing all around the world. The fiscal people are getting together with us. The environmental people want to get ahead in the front of the line, so they get their thing. But all of it is put on the weight of believing that they can maintain the integrity of the purchasing power of the dollar, which I do not believe they can continue to do this, because sometimes they even hide the figures of really, what's happening. Even now, it's getting more confusing even to keep up with the money supply figures. They don't reveal it. It's difficult, and say that's not important. But
right.
Ultimately is debt motivating all of them to agree that you must print the money in an unlimited fashion, no matter what we say publicly.
All right, so if we are seeing the potential collapse of the dollar, Dr. Paul, what replaces it?
Well, that's the big question, because nobody knows. There's nothing there to replace it right now. if we get into the chaos, which is very possible, that's what's going to happen. You have social destruction. You have something like if it ever got so bad, it'd be like Venezuela, and something like that. I can't believe that we're that stupid to go that far. But no, they need monetary reform. Even if they don't go in the direction I want, they're going to have to do something. But they would have to, politically, it's not likely, because politically, economically, it involves living within our means a little bit, cutting back a little bit of spending. But nobody really is serious, maybe 3 or 4 people. Nobody thinks they're going to cut anything. There's no way that they're going to cut it and improve things in that manner. So they have to start thinking, and I worry about the economic chaos, but also the social chaos that's going on. I never, I live in Texas, and I keep thinking Texas has avoided some of the really dumb stuff in New York City and Chicago and Detroit. But even Austin has street people now with tents out there, and we're a wealthy state and still doing pretty well. But no, this is a consequence of bankruptcy, and they're fidgeting and they're picking out victims and they're scurrying around, and but everybody gets a bailout because they don't have anything else they can do, and that's why you can depend on the destruction of the currency in hopes that they'll wake up and do something. But there aren't very many examples that right in the middle of a chaos like this, they say, oh, let's do common sense. Let's vote to cut the budget by 3%. That'd be a civil war. They're going to wait for the civil war that's going to come when you don't cut anything and your purchasing power goes down 10%. I think all of that can happen. The tax system will be used, but just printing money as a tax, I say all you have to do is spend money and run up the debt. That is a tax, because if people won't loan you the money, which they won't, then they have to print the money, and the devaluation of the currency becomes a tax. So the tax is going up, but they will do it for public relations reason. They will have to show that they're putting a heavy tax on the very wealthy because of the civil strife that's going on. So that will happen. But it's something that should be preventable. It's really hard to take care of once it breaks out, and that's why people are really so scared. But I think there are 2 parts of it. One is we have the financial bankruptcy. Most people understand it. Too much debt, printing money, borrowing, this sort of thing. But the other is the moral bankruptcy. If you look at it and what's going on in this country with this attack on freedom of speech, and attack on the values of our Western civilization, boy, that is a big deal, and that represents a bankruptcy, a moral bankruptcy, and that is what probably will become more important than just dealing with the financial bankruptcy. But I think they're both, and we have a financial bankruptcy and a moral bankruptcy, and we've never had to go through this quite like this before.